The morning alarm rang through the metal halls of Station Kepler 7. Cadet Zixtel rolled out of his sleeping pod and felt his crystal bones creak. The gravity here was always too heavy. It pressed down on his shoulders like invisible hands, trying to crush him into the floor. Zixtel looked at himself in the mirror. His skin was clear like glass, with blue light running through it in thin lines. That was normal for his people, the Vorthik. Back home on his crystal world, he could jump 3 times his height and run for hours without getting tired. Here, he could barely walk without feeling exhausted. The Galactic Military Academy was the best school in known space. Cadets came here from hundreds of different worlds. Only the strongest and smartest could pass the test to get in. Zixtel had trained for years just to qualify. He put on his gray uniform and walked to the dining hall. The corridors were wide and tall, built to fit all the different alien species that studied here. Some cadets were as small as his hand. Others were bigger than trees. Some had wings, others had tentacles. Some breathed air like him. Others needed special masks. In the dining hall, Zixtel sat with his usual group. There was Crotch, who looked like a giant insect with 6 legs and green shell skin. Beside him sat Ulamora, a female from the water world, Aquanus. She wore a special suit that kept her moist, and gills on her neck opened and closed as she breathed. "Did you hear about today's training?" Crotch asked, his voice clicking and buzzing. "We have to use the Iron Crucible again." Zixtel groaned. The Iron Crucible was the worst part of academy training. It was a huge room where the gravity could be changed. The instructors liked to set it to 2.3 times normal gravity. For most species, that was the limit of what their bodies could handle without breaking. "I hate that place," Ulamora said, her voice making bubbling sounds through her breathing mask. "Last time, I couldn't even stand up properly." "At least you didn't pass out like Drenko did," Crotch reminded them. Drenko was a cadet from the floating cities of Arios. His people had hollow bones to help them fly. Heavy gravity was very dangerous for them. After breakfast, all the cadets gathered in the Iron Crucible. The room was massive, with metal walls and a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Strange machines hung from the walls, their purposes unknown to most cadets. The floor was covered in thick padding that had seen thousands of training sessions. Commander Hector stood in the center of the room. He was from Altair Prime, a world where everything was bigger and stronger than normal. His body was covered in thick scales, and his arms were as wide as tree trunks. 2 rows of sharp teeth filled his mouth, and his eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. "Cadets," his deep voice boomed across the room. "Today you will face the graviton weights." A collective groan went up from the assembled students. The graviton weights were the Academy's most feared training tools. They looked like simple metal blocks, but each one contained a gravity generator. They could be made as heavy or as light as the instructor wanted. "These weights will teach you what real strength means," Commander Hector continued. "In space combat, you might need to move heavy equipment while your ship is spinning or accelerating. You might need to rescue someone while gravity is pulling you in all directions." He walked over to a row of metal cubes lined up against the wall. Each one was about the size of a large box, made of dark gray metal with blue lights running along the edges. Numbers glowed on small screens attached to each weight. "We will start with the basic level," the commander announced. He touched a control panel, and the room's gravity increased to the standard 2.3 setting. Immediately, every cadet felt the crushing force pressing down on them. Zixtel's knees wanted to buckle. His crystal bones, which were strong but light, felt like they might crack under the pressure. Around him, other cadets struggled in different ways. The flying species could barely move. The water breathers had trouble with their breathing equipment. Even the strong species from heavy worlds looked uncomfortable. "The first weight is set to 50 standard masses," Commander Hector said. He pointed to one of the smaller cubes. "Cadet Baronash, you will go first." Baranj was from Gravian, a world with very heavy gravity. His people were built like living rocks, with thick gray skin and muscles like steel cables. If anyone could lift a weight, it would be him. Marnesh stepped forward slowly, each footstep making a heavy thud on the padded floor. He bent down and wrapped his massive hands around the weight. The muscles in his arms bulged as he strained to lift it. The weight came up a few inches, held there for a moment, then crashed back down. Marnesh stumbled backward, breathing hard. 47 seconds of contact time, Commander Hector noted, writing on his datapad. Marginal lifting capability achieved. Next. One by one, cadets tried to lift different weights. Some managed to move them a little. Others couldn't budge them at all. Zixtel watched as cadets from different worlds struggled with the seemingly simple task of picking up a metal box dot when his turn came. Zixtel chose one of the lighter weights, set to only 20 standard masses. He had never lifted anything that heavy back home, but here in the crushing gravity, it felt impossible. He put his hands on the metal surface and pulled with all his strength. The weight didn't move even a tiny bit. Insufficient strength, Commander Hector wrote down. Report to supplemental training. As the session continued, Zixtel noticed something interesting. The strongest cadets could handle the basic weights, but there were larger weights against the far wall that nobody even attempted. These had warning labels and red lights. Their screens showed numbers in the hundreds, some even higher. "Commander," asked Cadet Turval, a brave student from the warrior world of Sparta 7, "what about those weights over there?" Commander Hector looked at the advanced weights and smiled, showing all his sharp teeth. "Those are for advanced training only. The heaviest one is set to 847 standard masses. No cadet in Academy history has ever moved it." The room fell silent. 847 standard masses. That was more weight than most starship engines could lift. "Why do we even have it?" Turval asked. "To remind you," Commander Hector said, "that the universe is full of challenges that seem impossible. Your job is to find a way to make them possible." As they left the Iron Crucible that day, Zixtal couldn't stop thinking about those advanced weights. Somewhere in the galaxy, there might be situations where such strength would be needed. The Academy was preparing them for dangers they couldn't even imagine. The weights seemed impossible to move. But then again, getting into the Academy had seemed impossible too. 3 weeks had passed since Zixtal's first encounter with the graviton weights. Every day brought more training in the Iron Crucible, and every day he got a little stronger. His crystal bones had adapted to the heavy gravity, growing denser and more resilient. He could now lift a 20 standard mass weight for almost a full minute. The Academy pushed its students hard. Morning runs through corridors set to crushing gravity. Combat training with weighted gear. Technical classes where they learned to repair equipment while artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Every exercise was designed to prepare them for the harsh realities of military service in space. Zixtal sat in the recreation area, studying star charts on his datapad. Around him, other cadets relaxed in their own ways. Crotch was playing a strategy game with his 6 hands moving pieces faster than the eye could follow. Ulamora floated in a small pool designed for water-breathing species, her gills working peacefully. "Attention all cadets," came Commander Hector's voice over the intercom system. "Report to the main assembly hall immediately." The recreation area emptied quickly. Cadets from dozens of species moved through the corridors like a river of different shapes and colors. Some walked, others slithered. A few floated using personal gravity devices. The diversity still amazed Gistel. Even after months at the Academy, the assembly hall was enormous. with seats arranged in tiers that could accommodate every type of alien physiology. The ceiling was a transparent dome showing the stars outside. Zixtel found his usual seat between Crotch and Ulamora. Commander Hector stood on the central platform, his massive form making the podium look small. Behind him, a holographic display showed images of various Academy achievements and records. "Cadets," he began, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "Today I announce a special challenge. At the end of this semester, any cadet who can successfully manipulate the maximum calibration graviton weight will receive automatic advancement to Officer Candidate School." Excited murmurs filled the hall. Officer Candidate School was the dream of every cadet. Graduates became ship commanders, station administrators, and military leaders. It normally took years of perfect grades and flawless service records to even qualify for the entrance. Exam. The holographic display changed to show the ion crucible. The image focused on the largest graviton weight, the one that had intimidated everyone since their first day of training. Red warning lights blinked around its base, and the screen on its side showed those impossible numbers. "The maximum setting," Commander Hector continued, "is 847 standard masses. The weight of approximately 800 adult Altarians, or equivalent mass from any other species." Zixtel felt his crystal matrix shiver. 800 bodies worth of weight. He had trouble lifting 20 standard masses. The challenge seemed designed to be impossible. "The test is simple," the commander explained. "You must lift the weight completely off the ground and hold it steady for 10 seconds. You may attempt the test as many times as you wish over the next month. Any cadet who succeeds will immediately graduate to officer track." The hall erupted in discussion. Some cadets looked excited, others appeared terrified. A few of the stronger species were already making plans and discussing training strategies. Over the following days, cadets began attempting the challenge. The Academy opened viewing sessions so students could watch and learn from each other's techniques. Zixtel attended everyone, studying how different species approached the impossible task. Cadet Morgan was first to try. He was from Titan III, a world where everything was built bigger and heavier. His people were known throughout the galaxy for their incredible physical strength. Morgan stood nearly 3 meters tall, with arms that could crush steel. The iron crucible was packed with spectators. The gravity was set to the standard 2.3 level for safety, though everyone knew the test itself would be much worse. The maximum weight sat in the center of the room like a metal monument to impossibility. Morgan approached the weight slowly, studying it from all angles. He had trained for this moment, building up his strength with smaller weights over many days. His muscles bulged as he psyched himself up for the attempt. He bent down and gripped the weight with both hands. Every muscle in his body strained as he pulled upward. The weight shifted slightly, rising perhaps 2 centimeters off the ground. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually succeed. Then gravity won. The weight crashed back down with a metallic clang that echoed through the room. Morgan collapsed beside it, exhausted and defeated. Contact time, 12 seconds. Maximum lift, 2 centimeters, Commander Hector announced. Insufficient for challenge completion. Next came Zarakith, a female warrior from the warworld of Bloodstone. Her people were famous for never surrendering, for finding strength beyond what their bodies should be able to produce. She had trained by fighting multiple opponents while wearing heavy practice armor. Zarakith's attempt lasted longer than Morgan's. She managed to lift the weight nearly 5 centimeters and hold it there for several seconds. But eventually, her strength gave out. She fell forward onto her hands and knees, breathing heavily through her battle mask. Day after day, the strongest cadets in the Academy tried and failed. Each attempt was measured and recorded. The best results were posted on bulletin boards throughout the station. Slowly, a ranking developed of who had come closest to success. Aranash, the rock-like cadet from Gravian, managed to lift the weight 6 centimeters. Tomok from the high-gravity world of Iron Peak reached 7 centimeters. A group of 3 cadets working together could lift at 15 centimeters, but the rules required individual effort. Zixtel watched every attempt, taking careful notes. He studied the techniques, the breathing patterns, the way different body types approached the challenge. He also noticed something else. Every cadet who tried was completely exhausted afterward. Many required medical attention. Some were injured despite all the safety precautions. "Why do you watch so much?" Crotch asked one evening as they sat in the recreation area. "You know you can't lift it." "No offense, but your people aren't built for heavy lifting." Zixtal's crystal skin flickered with blue light, a sign of deep thought among his species. "I'm not watching to see who succeeds. I'm watching to understand why everyone fails." "They fail because it's impossible," Ulamora said, her voice bubbling through her breathing mask. 847 standard masses. No individual can lift that much weight. "Maybe," Zixtal said quietly. "But the Academy doesn't give impossible tests. They give hard tests, dangerous tests, tests that push us beyond what we think we can do, but not impossible ones." As the month progressed, more cadets attempted the challenge. The medical bay filled with students recovering from muscle strain, bone stress, and exhaustion. Some gave up after their first try. Others kept coming back, determined to find a way. The current record was held by Draconius, a massive reptilian cadet from the dragon world of Parothia. He had managed to lift the weight 8.5 centimeters and hold it for 3 seconds. It was the closest anyone had come to success, but still far from the 10 seconds of clear lifting required. With 1 week left in the challenge period, Zixtal made a decision. Despite Kregis' words, despite the obvious mismatch between his crystal body and the massive weight, he decided to try. He had been studying the attempts for weeks. He had noticed patterns in how the weight responded, subtle details about its balance and grip points. Most importantly, he had a theory about why everyone was failing. The weight wasn't just heavy. It was designed to be harder to lift than its mass alone would suggest. The gravity generator didn't just make it heavy downward. It created a field that made the surrounding gravity unstable. Cadets weren't just fighting the weight's mass. They were fighting against gravity itself shifting and changing around them. But Zixtal had an idea. His people came from a crystal world where gravity was weak, but unpredictable. Crystal formations could create pockets of altered gravity. Growing up, he had learned to sense these changes, to work with unstable gravity rather than against it. It might not be enough. His body was still too light, too fragile for this kind of test. But he had to try. The universe was full of challenges that seemed impossible. His job was to find a way to make them possible. The morning after Zixtal had decided to attempt the impossible challenge, something unusual happened. A new cadet arrived at the academy. This was strange, because the semester was already 3 months old. New students never joined this late in the program. Commander Hector gathered all the cadets in the assembly hall to introduce the newcomer. The hall buzzed with curiosity as hundreds of alien students speculated about who this late arrival might be. "Cadets," Commander Hector announced, "I present your new classmate, Sarah Chun from the planet Earth." A small figure walked onto the platform beside the massive commander. Compared to his scaled, muscular bulk, she looked impossibly tiny and fragile. Zixtal had never seen a species quite like this one. She stood upright on 2 legs, like many species, but had no visible armor or natural protection. Her skin was a light brown color with no scales, shells, or crystal formations. Her body looked soft and vulnerable. Strange fur grew only on top of her head in long, dark strands. Her eyes were round and dark, set in a face that seemed almost childlike. Earth is a recently contacted world, the commander explained. Cadet Chen is the first of her species to attend the Galactic Military Academy. I expect you all to make her feel welcome. After the assembly, students clustered in groups discussing this strange new arrival. Most aliens had heard rumors about Earth, a small, distant planet that had just developed faster than light travel. But none had actually seen a human before. She looks so weak, Crotch observed, his compound eyes studying Sarah as she collected her room assignment. No natural weapons, no armor plating, no protective shell. How did her species survive to develop spaceflight? Maybe they're really smart? Ulamura suggested. Some species make up for physical weakness with superior intelligence. Zixtel watched Sarah struggle with her luggage. The standard academy equipment was designed to fit multiple species, which meant it was often too big or too heavy for smaller cadets. Her breathing seemed labored in the station's atmosphere, and she moved slowly under the artificial gravity. During their first shared class, Military History of the Outer Rim, Sarah sat quietly in the back. She took notes on a small device and asked no questions. When Professor Zektaran called on her to discuss human military tactics, she simply said that her people had no experience with space warfare. What about planetary conflicts? The professor pressed. Surely your species had wars before reaching the stars. Yes, Sarah answered simply. We had wars. And what weapons did you use? Energy beams? Plasma cannons? Gravity disruptors? Sarah looked uncomfortable. Mostly metal projectiles thrown by controlled explosions. Simple chemical reactions. The class erupted in laughter. Even the most primitive species used energy weapons for serious conflicts. Chemical explosives were what children used for fireworks. After class, Zixtel approached Sarah in the corridor. She was leaning against a wall, breathing heavily. The standard academy atmosphere was oxygen-rich for most species, but perhaps too thin for humans. Are you all right? He asked, his voice making the melodic tones. His people used for friendly conversation. Sarah looked up at him with those strange round eyes. Just getting used to the gravity. It's lighter here than on Earth, but the atmospheric pressure is different. This surprised Zixtel. The Academy's gravity was set to 2.3 standard, which was crushing for most species. Lighter than Earth? What's your home world's gravity like? 1 Earth gravity, Sarah said. Which is about, I think you call it 4.2 standard? The orientation materials said your artificial gravity here runs at 2.3, so it should be easier for me. Zixtel's crystal matrix flashed in amazement. Earth's gravity was nearly twice what the Academy considered maximum safe training levels. No wonder she looked tired. Her body was used to much more pressure, and now everything felt wrong. Would you like help finding the dining hole? He offered. Sarah smiled, showing small white teeth with no sharp edges. That would be very helpful. Thank you. As they walked, Zixtel learned more about this strange species. Sarah explained that humans had no natural weapons because they used tools instead. They had no armor because they wore protective coverings. They seemed to have survived by adapting their environment rather than adapting themselves. In the dining hall, Sarah's differences became even more obvious. She needed special food supplements because human digestive systems were apparently very particular. She drank large amounts of water, far more than most species required. When other cadets asked about her planet, she described conditions that sounded impossibly harsh. The atmosphere is 21% oxygen, she explained to a group of curious aliens, with nitrogen making up most of the rest. The pressure at sea level is... She paused to convert units. About 2.4 times what you maintain here on the station. That would crush most of our lungs, wheezed Drenko. the hollow-bone cadet from Arios. The temperature ranges from well below freezing to over 40 degrees Celsius, Sarah continued. And there's dangerous radiation from our star that can burn skin tissue if you're exposed too long. The aliens stared at her in horror. Zixtel was beginning to understand why humans looked so fragile. They came from a world that would kill most galactic species within minutes. Sarah's first week at the academy was difficult. She struggled with basic exercises that other cadets found easy. In zero-gravity training, she moved clumsily compared to species that had evolved for three-dimensional environments. Her reaction times were slow compared to predator species. Her night vision was poor compared to tunnel-dwelling aliens, but there were strange moments when she seemed almost too capable. During equipment maintenance class, she fixed a broken gravity generator using methods that weren't in any manual. When asked how she knew what to do, she said the malfunction reminded her of fixing car engines on Earth. "What's a car?" the instructor asked. "A ground vehicle," Sarah explained. "We use them for transportation." "Ground vehicles use gravity generators?" "No, they use internal combustion engines. But the diagnostic principles are similar. You listen for irregular sounds, check for loose connections, test electrical systems." The instructor was baffled. Most species use automated repair systems or specialized technicians. The idea that every individual might know how to fix complex machinery seemed strange. Sarah also showed unexpected knowledge in survival training. When the class was presented with various emergency scenarios, she consistently found solutions that other cadets missed. She could identify which foods were safe to eat, how to purify water, how to build shelter from random materials. "We learned this as children," she explained when asked. "Basic survival skills. You never know when you might need them." Zixtal was fascinated by these contradictions. Sarah seemed weak in direct physical comparisons, but strong in practical applications. She struggled with the Academy's high-tech training methods, but excelled when forced to improvise solutions. The most interesting moment came during a medical emergency drill. Cadet Vorthag had simulated injuries that required immediate treatment. While other students searched for the proper medical devices, Sarah dropped to her knees beside the wounded cadet and began applying pressure to stop bleeding using nothing but her hands and torn fabric from her uniform. "Where did you learn battlefield medicine?" the medical instructor asked, impressed by her quick response. "First aid class," Sarah said. "Basic emergency medical training. Everyone learns it in school." "Everyone?" "Every human child learns combat medicine." "Not combat medicine," Sarah corrected. "Just basic first aid. How to help people who are hurt until professional help arrives. Humans get injured a lot." The instructor made notes on his datapad. A species where every individual knew emergency medical procedures was remarkable. Most civilized worlds had eliminated the need for such skills through technology and safety systems. As Sarah's first month at the academy progressed, Zixtal noticed other cadets beginning to respect her. Despite her apparent physical limitations, she never gave up, no matter how difficult the exercises became. She helped others with practical problems, sharing human techniques that often worked better than standard galactic methods. But she was still clearly the weakest cadet in terms of pure physical ability. When they returned to the Iron Crucible for graviton weight training, Sarah could barely lift the smallest weights. In the 2.3 gravity environment, she moved like she was underwater, slow and careful. "Don't push yourself too hard," Zixtal advised after watching her struggle with a 5-mass weight. Some species just aren't built for heavy lifting. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead with a small cloth. "It's frustrating," she admitted. "Back home, I was actually pretty strong. I could deadlift almost twice my body weight." Here I can barely manage basic exercises. Deadlift? Zixtel asked. Exercise where you pick up very heavy weight from the ground, Sarah explained. Common human strength training. Zixtel was confused. If Sarah was considered strong by human standards, but struggled with basic academy weights, then humans must be incredibly weak as a species. Yet they had somehow survived on a world with crushing gravity, dangerous atmosphere, and lethal radiation. He was beginning to think that humans might be more complex than they appeared. There were pieces to this puzzle that didn't fit together properly. But one thing was certain. 2 weeks had passed since Sarah Chen's arrival at the academy. The semester-end challenge was approaching, and many cadets were making their final attempts to lift the impossible graviton weight. The medical bay had become a busy place as student after student pushed their bodies beyond safe limits. Zixtel had finally worked up the courage to make his own attempt. Despite his friend's concerns about his crystal body being too fragile, he wanted to test his theory about the weight's gravity field. He had requested a time slot for that afternoon. The morning training session was routine until everything went wrong. The class was working with medium-level graviton weights in the ion crucible. Sarah was struggling with a 10-mass weight, trying to lift it while the room's gravity was set to the standard 2.3 level. Nearby, Mordain, a heavy worlder from Graviton Prime, was working with a much heavier 50-mass weight. Mordain was one of the Academy's strongest cadets. His people came from a world where gravity was 3 times galactic standard. He had thick bones and muscle fibers like steel cables. If anyone could eventually succeed at the maximum challenge, most students believed it would be him. Looking good, Mordain, encouraged Tarmok, who was spotting for him. You're getting stronger every day. Mordain grunted as he lifted the 50-mass weight above his head. His arm shook slightly from the effort, but he held it steady. The blue lights along the weight's edges pulsed in rhythm with the gravity generators. That's when the first warning alarm sounded. Attention, came an automated voice from the ceiling speakers. Graviton weight system malfunction detected. Please clear the training area immediately. But before anyone could react, the weight in Mordain's hands began to change. The blue lights flickered and brightened. The numbers on the display screen started climbing rapidly. I can't put it down, Mordain shouted, panic rising in his voice. It's getting heavier. The weight that had been 50 masses was now reading 70, then 90. The gravity field around it was fluctuating wildly, creating unstable zones that made movement dangerous. Other cadets backed away as their personal gravity sensors began warning of dangerous field variations. Mordain's arms began to buckle under the increasing load. His face showed the strain as he fought to control the weight that was no longer following normal physics. The display screen now read 120 masses and was still climbing. Emergency protocols activated, announced the automated system. Graviton field stabilization in progress. But the stabilization wasn't working. Whatever had gone wrong with the weight's internal systems, it was beyond the safety system's ability to correct. The mass reading hit 150 and kept rising. Get emergency response, shouted Instructor Veltara, who was supervising the training session. Full technical team to Iron Crucible immediately. Mordain's knees began to buckle. The weight was now reading 200 masses and still increasing. His thick bones were starting to crack under pressure that exceeded even his species' considerable limits. If the weight fell while this heavy, it could crush him completely. Can't hold it, Mordain gasped. Several cadets tried to help. Marinash and Dermok attempted to get close enough to grab the weight, but the unstable gravity field around it made approach impossible. They were pushed back by waves of gravitational distortion that sent them stumbling across the room. The field is too unstable, Marinash called out. We can't get near him. The weight's display now showed 300 masses. Mordain's legs were shaking so badly that collapse seemed inevitable. Sweat poured down his face as he fought a losing battle against the malfunctioning device. Medical team en route reported Instructor Veltara into her communicator. Technical response team is 5 minutes out. He doesn't have 5 minutes, Zixtel said, his crystal matrix flashing with urgent blue light. 400 masses. 500. The weight continued its relentless climb toward impossible numbers. Mordain's arms were now visibly bending under the strain. His species' incredible strength was being pushed far beyond any reasonable limit. That's when Sarah stepped forward. "Everyone move back," she said calmly, her voice cutting through the panic and shouting. "Sarah, no," Zixtel called. "You can't lift that. It's over 500 masses now." Sarah ignored him. She walked directly toward Mordain and the malfunctioning weight, moving through the unstable gravity field as if it didn't affect her. The gravitational distortions that had pushed back much stronger. Aliens seemed to barely slow her down. The display screen read 600 masses. 700. 800. "I'm sorry, Mordain," Sarah said as she reached the struggling cadet. "This is going to hurt." Before anyone could ask what she meant, Sarah grabbed the weight with one hand and lifted it completely off Mordain's hands. The massive cadet collapsed to his knees, freed from the crushing burden that had been destroying his body. 847 masses. The same weight that had defeated every cadet who had attempted the semester challenge. The weight that no individual in Academy history had ever been able to lift. Sarah held it above her head with one arm. Not straining, not shaking, just holding it steady as if it weighed nothing at all. The entire room fell, silent except for the sound of Mordain's heavy breathing and the electronic whine of the malfunctioning gravity generators. Technical. "Shutdown in progress," announced the automated system. "Graviton field deactivating." As the weight's internal gravity generator powered down, the mass reading dropped rapidly back to normal levels. Sarah lowered the now normal 50 mass weight gently to the ground and stepped back. "Medical team is here," she said, gesturing toward the emergency responders who had just arrived. "Mordain needs attention for bone stress and muscle strain." The medical technicians rushed forward to treat the injured cadet, while the technical team began working on the malfunctioning equipment. But every eye in the room was on Sarah, who stood quietly beside the weight. She had just lifted as if it were a simple training exercise. Commander Hector burst through the doors, having heard the emergency alerts. His yellow eyes swept the scene, taking in the medical response, the technical teams, and the crowd of stunned cadets. "Report," he demanded. "Graviton weight malfunction," Instructor Veltara explained quickly. "The mass setting climbed to over 800 before we could shut it down." Cadet Mordain was trapped underneath when the weight became too heavy to control. How was he rescued? Veltara looked at Sarah, then back at the commander. Cadet Chun lifted the weight off him. The full weight at maximum malfunction load. Commander Hector's scaled face showed no expression, but his eyes fixed on Sarah with new intensity. The weight reached 847 masses? "Yes, sir," confirmed Zixtel, finding his voice. "The same setting as the semester challenge." Sarah lifted it with one hand. One hand? The commander moved closer to examine the weight and its control systems. The technical team confirmed that the device had indeed malfunctioned up to maximum levels before emergency shutdown. "Cadet Chun," Commander Hector said, his deep voice carrying a tone none of the students had heard before. "How?" Sarah looked up at the massive alien instructor. "How what, sir?" "How did you lift a weight that has defeated every cadet in Academy history, including species from heavy worlds with natural strength far exceeding anything your physical frame should be capable of?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, as if trying to decide how much to explain. Around her, dozens of alien cadets waited for an answer that would make sense of what they had just witnessed. "It wasn't that heavy," she said finally. "Not compared to what I'm used to. Your planet has stronger gravity than ours," Commander Hector observed. "But not enough to explain this level of strength." "No, sir," Sarah agreed. "But Earth gravity never changes. Every day, from the moment we're born until the day we die, we carry the full weight of our world on our shoulders. We don't have gravity generators or artificial fields. We just have the constant, crushing pull of a planet that's trying to drag us down every second of every day." She gestured toward the weight on the ground. "This device can change its mass, but it can't change what I am. I'm from a world where gravity doesn't give you a choice. You either get strong enough to stand up under it, or you die." The room remained silent as the implications of her words sank in. Every cadet in the academy came from worlds with technology to modify gravity, or bodies specifically adapted to their local conditions. None had considered what it might be like to evolve under unrelenting, unchangeable force. "Every human carries Earth's gravity with them wherever they go," Sarah continued. "We don't know what it means to be weak, because weakness isn't an option our world allows." Commander Hector nodded slowly. "Report to my office after medical clearance. Cadet Chun, we need to discuss your training program." As the emergency teams finished their work and the other cadets slowly dispersed, Zixtel approached Sarah. "That was incredible," he said. "But why didn't you tell anyone you could do that?" Sarah smiled, the same gentle expression she had shown on her first day. "You never asked. Besides, I thought everyone could do it. I'm actually not very strong by human standards." Zixtal's crystal matrix blazed with astonished light as he realized the truth. If Sarah wasn't particularly strong among her own people, then humans weren't just adapted to high gravity. Word of what Sarah had done spread through the academy like wildfire. Within hours, every cadet, instructor, and administrator on Station Kepler 7 had heard the story. The small human who had seemed so fragile had lifted a weight that defeated the strongest warriors from across the galaxy. Zixtel found himself at the center of constant questions from other students who wanted to understand what they had witnessed. He had become something of an expert on humans simply because he had befriended Sarah first. "Is it true she lifted it with one hand?" asked Ulamora for the 10th time that day. "Yes," Zixtel confirmed again. "I saw it myself. 847 masses, and she didn't even strain. But how is that possible?" Crotch buzzed, his compound eyes reflecting confusion. "She can barely lift the training weights in normal exercises." That was the question everyone was asking. The Academy's finest scientists and military strategists were trying to understand how human physiology could produce such impossible results. The answer came during an emergency assembly called by Academy Director Kinter herself. The director was an ancient crystalline from the same species as Zixtel, but her crystal matrix had grown for over 3 centuries, making her body towering and complex. She rarely appeared before students, preferring to observe from her administrative towers. "Cadets," her voice resonated through the assembly hall like musical crystal. "Recent events have required us to reassess our understanding of physical capability among galactic species. What you witnessed was not an anomaly. It was the result of evolutionary pressure that no other known species has experienced." Behind her, the holographic display showed Earth as seen from space. It looked like a blue and white marble, beautiful and peaceful. But as the display zoomed in, the data readouts told a different story. Earth has a surface gravity of 9.8 meters per second squared, Director Quinter explained. "In our standard measurements, that equals 4.2 times normal galactic conditions. But gravity is only one factor in the equation. The display changed to show atmospheric data. Earth's atmospheric pressure at sea level is 2.4 times what we maintain on this station. The oxygen concentration is high enough to be toxic to many species. The temperature variations range from levels that would freeze most life forms to heat that would cook them. More disturbing data appeared. The planet receives dangerous radiation from its star. The magnetic field fluctuates. The weather systems produce winds strong enough to destroy buildings and floods that reshape entire landscapes. Zixtel felt his crystal matrix dim with understanding. Earth wasn't just a high-gravity world. It was a death world where everything was actively trying to kill anything that lived there. No species in galactic history has evolved under such consistently hostile conditions, the director continued. Most civilizations develop technology to modify their environment. Humans develop bodies to survive in an environment that would not be modified. The display showed human anatomy, comparing it to other galactic species. The differences were shocking when properly explained. Human bones are not just strong. They are designed to bear weight constantly without mechanical support. Human muscles contain fiber types that can sustain enormous loads for extended periods. Their cardiovascular system can function under pressure that would crush most hearts. But they look so weak, called out Tarvel from the warrior world of Sparta 7. Appearance is deceiving. Director Quinter replied. Humans evolved efficiency rather than display. Every gram of their body weight serves a survival function. They cannot afford the luxury of decorative features or specialized adaptations that work only in specific environments. The display showed images of humans performing various activities on Earth, climbing vertical rock faces, using only their hands and feet, running long distances without technological assistance, lifting and moving objects many times their own body weight using nothing but muscle power. Their entire species has been participating in strength training since birth, the director explained. Every step they take, every breath they draw, every movement they make is performed against crushing gravitational force. What we call maximum safe training conditions represents a relaxing environment for them. Commander Hector stepped forward. Director, how does this affect Academy training protocols? It doesn't, she replied simply. Cadet Chen has automatically qualified for Officer Candidate School by successfully completing the semester challenge. But more importantly, she has revealed capabilities that could revolutionize our understanding of physical training. The assembly stirred with excitement. If humans could teach other species to develop even a fraction of their strength, it would change everything about military capability. However, Director Quinter continued, raising her crystal hand for silence. Preliminary tests suggest that most species cannot safely train under Earth normal conditions. Their biology simply is not designed for it. What is natural for humans would be lethal for others. Over the following days, Sarah's role at the Academy changed dramatically. She was moved from regular cadet status to a special training program designed to understand and document human capabilities. Scientists studied her movements, her breathing, the way her muscles responded to different challenges. But Sarah also became a teacher. She worked with instructors to develop new training methods based on human techniques. Not the impossible strength training that only her species could survive, but the mental approaches that humans use to push beyond apparent limitations. The weight isn't your enemy, Sarah explained to a group of cadets struggling with basic graviton exercises. It's just another environmental challenge, like weather or terrain. You don't fight it. You adapt to work within it. She taught them breathing techniques that helped manage stress under heavy loads. She showed them how to position their bodies to use leverage instead of pure strength. Most importantly, she demonstrated the human approach to failure. On Earth, failure means death, she said matter-of-factly. So we don't think about failure as an option. We think about problems as puzzles to solve. There's always a way through if you're willing to try enough different approaches. Zixtel found himself studying human culture and history in his free time. What he learned amazed him. Humans had fought wars using primitive weapons, while other species developed energy technology. They had explored dangerous environments without protective gear that other species considered essential. They had survived disasters that would have ended most civilizations. How did your people ever survive long enough to develop spaceflight? He asked Sarah one evening as they studied together. Same way we survive everything else, she replied. We refuse to give up. Humans are too stubborn to go extinct. The semester-end ceremony took place in the main assembly hall. Sarah stood with the other graduating cadets, wearing the gold insignia of Officer Candidate School. She was the only student in Academy history to earn advancement through the Maximum Graviton Weight Challenge. But she wasn't the only student to have learned something important. The human approach to training, the mental techniques, the problem-solving methods, the refusal to accept limitations had spread through the entire cadet population. Overall performance scores had increased across every species. The galaxy has much to learn from humanity, Director Quinter announced during the graduation ceremony. Not just their physical capabilities, but their approach to overcoming obstacles that seem impossible. After the ceremony, Zixtel approached Sarah as she prepared to transfer to officer training. Will you come back to teach? He asked. Sarah smiled. I think I will. The academy has been good for me too. I've learned that strength isn't just about how much you can lift. It's about helping others discover their own capabilities. She looked around the station that had become her home. Besides, I want to see what happens when the galaxy really understands what humans can do. Zixtel's crystal matrix flashed with anticipation. Sarah was right. The discovery of Earth's capabilities would change everything. The galaxy's military academies would need to be restructured. Training protocols would be rewritten. The definition of physical possibility would be expanded. But more than that, the galaxy had learned a fundamental lesson about making assumptions. The species that looked weakest had turned out to be the strongest. The cadet who seemed most likely to fail had accomplished what no one else could manage. The universe was full of challenges that seemed impossible. The human approach was to make them possible anyway. As Sarah walked toward her new future as a galactic officer, Zixtel understood that everything was about to change. The galaxy had met its first Death World species, and nothing would ever be the same. The cadets had grappled with the weight and failed. The human had lifted it with one hand and taught them all what real strength meant. It wasn't about the weight you could carry. It was about refusing to be crushed by the weight that was already on your shoulders.